Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and lead instructor for CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday. If you enjoy this video, hit that like button, and if you want to submit to be on the show, take a look at the information in the description. You have a World Series bracelet, right? Did you win the 10K PLO 8 or the
No,
3K?
back in 17, I won the 1500 PLO8, and
Okay.
then the following year, I followed up with eighth place on the PLO8, Big O, and Limit 8 mix,
Right.
and then
That's actually my favorite event. That mixed
yeah, oh, I love that one.
that mixed event, and then especially when they throw in the fact that you can basically re-enter once. I have gone deep in that event for the 4 years that they've had it. Before we get into this hand, you're going to talk about a no limit hand heads up, but Nathan, he's right there with Bryce Yockey as usually the guys that go deep in these pot
I
limit
have a
oh 08
lot
events.
of respect for Bryce.
Right? Didn't you? And you've also gone deep in the 10Ks and stuff too. I know a few times.
Well, that year I did eighth and then 10th in the 1500 PLO8 and
Yeah.
17th on the 10K, and then next year I did another 17th or 18th on the 10K PLO8. So
Here's the thing about PLO8, and I actually put out a training video. I put out a sample training video over the weekend on this channel. If you want to check it out, it was just me playing on Bovada. The thing about PLO8, and here's the thing, it's not that I necessarily struggle in that event, but the reason why I like the mixed event more is because, and I'm sure you know this, Nathan, in the Big O and the PLO8 rounds, because they want the blinds to be, I think, exactly, I want to say half of the limit blinds, the
right.
levels in the pot limit in the limit Big O and PLO8 tournaments, the levels, like if you were to look at like level 8 in a straight PLO8 World Series tournament, and then you looked at level 8 in the mixed event, the blinds are half as much in the pot limit rounds than they are in the straight PLO8 tournament. So it goes way slower. I play a lot of limit, and then you also put in the fact that people are terrible at Big O that haven't played it before, and it's a recipe for a great event. The thing that what I would say is that I struggle, and I didn't even play the 10K PLO8 last year because I found that the game PLO8 as played in a tournament format is almost like a hybrid of PLO high and PLO8 with some somewhat
Absolutely.
limit concepts. So even though I play a fair amount of cash in Big O and PLO8, and I know split pot games, it's just kind of weird to me, or at least I'd have to do some studying at about 30 to 40 big blinds. The
I
medium
think what
stacks is kind of odd
I've
to me.
discovered, I discovered because I was actually working on training someone for a little while and just went through some material. And what I realized inherently, but didn't realize until I typed it out, is tournament format people are used to no limit setting with antes.
Right.
And so if you have 50 big blinds and no limit with the antes, and you are equivalent to something along the lines of 77 to 80 big blinds with no ante in PLO8.
Right.
Your stack just is tremendously deeper than people give it credit for. So 30 to 40 big blinds in a PLO or PLO8 is just inherently a much deeper stack. So when you see people stacking off with extremely light hands because they feel short stacked, they don't realize that they have essentially 1.5 to 1 3/4 the stack that they would in a no limit tournament.
Well, yeah, I mean that's like that in any pot limit event because there's no antes. But
Yeah.
then add to the fact that it's a split pot game, so it's actually hard to get knocked out. And I know that from a lot of high low tournaments, anyways. Where I mean, you can I've nursed one or two bets in limit '08.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing can be said with PLO8 too, because it's hard to get knocked out. So you can really just stick around in those events, and it's all about sort of survival. I think it's also a little bit about luck sometimes with what tables you get, because they're more so in the 10K, but there are some tables that play just really wild and fast, where every pot's going to be like 3.5x pre, right? So
Right.
just inherently you're gonna there's a lot more of a chance of variance, whereas there are some tables where there's never a raise pre-flop. So it's kind of interesting. But the 10K PLO8, it's one that I skipped last year. But like I said, I knew that you had like a lot of success with it. It's probably one of the softer 10Ks, I would say, of any discipline, though, for sure. Because you get guys in there that, like, if a guy goes in there and plays it and he's a PLO, I've seen high stakes PLO guys play it, they would have a better chance playing no limit hold'em. I feel like that, you know what I mean?
I
Like
agree.
they just don't know what's going on at all. But
I played the first year 10K with Anthony Zeno, and I mean he made some absolutely atrocious moves. He's a good friend of mine now, but he actually followed it up 3 years later and won the 1500.
Right.
I believe it was last year.
right,
And I told him, I was like, you're probably the last person I want to actually study and get good at this game. Because, I mean, the first year I busted him day one on just some atrocious play. And, now he's gone back and he's studied it and he's figured out, some lower variants and how to play correctly.
yeah.
But I think a lot of those guys are just awesome at PLO, don't correlate those skills properly.
Chufty, you know who Chufty is too?
Chufty.
Chufty, the English guy. What the hell is his real name?
Probably recognize
I
him.
can't, for some reason I can't. Ashcroft, Robert Ashcroft or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that one.
He's another guy. But anyway, he's another fast and wild guy. But anyways, all right, you got a no limit hand for us, right?
Yeah. So it came as part of a mixed game format. That's primarily what I play. So neither me nor the villain have a lot of experience playing with each other in no limit. It's part of a 30-60 mix. And this hand is a 5-10 no limit hand.
So is this like on that King's Club? Just out of curiosity.
King's Club.
King's Club. Okay. So is the no limit, when you play the no limit, is it capped? Is it a capped pot?
Yes. So it's a 5-10 $1,000 cap.
All right. So 100. Well, that's not bad. So it's 100 big blind cap.
Right.
That's actually that's actually a lot for a capped round. You know what I'm saying?
It should usually be 60.
Yeah.
40 to 60 is traditional, but
Right.
they win 100, which is pretty large.
All right. So 5-10 no limit. Okay.
Okay, so 5-10 no limit. I'm in the small blind on the button with Jack of clubs, Jack of diamonds.
You're playing heads up? Is that right?
Playing heads up.
Okay.
Right.
So small blind on button, heads up. Okay. Jack of clubs, Jack of diamonds. Okay. Yep.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I 3x it to 30.
Okay.
He flats from the big blind.
All right. So big blind calls. Okay.
All right. So flop comes out ace of clubs, king of spades, jack of hearts.
Ace of clubs, king of spades, jack of hearts. So you flop bottom set here, right?
Bottom set.
Yep.
He should never have, higher set.
Right.
So
Sure.
he checks on over to me.
Okay.
I go with 1/3 pot, $20.
Okay.
Which is going to be my standard here.
So you bet $20. Okay. Yep.
20.
Yep.
With the intention, board structure like this, my intention is to go about 1/3 on flop and then 1.5 on turn.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, when he defends to, well, I mean, you're betting small here, so he can have, I mean, he's probably supposed to defend with at least even any gut shot here with the backdoor, right? If it's a rainbow board, so you can have 10x, queen x with a backdoor, and then you start to just try to drive out and try to get, well, you're not driving out, but you're trying to concentrate on getting value from ace x, on the turn.
Yeah.
It's good that you don't have an ace, obviously. So you bet 20.
I bet 20, and then he actually check raises to 119.
So, I mean, obviously he can have all the queen tens. I mean, we talked about how he really should never have aces, kings, or ace king. So he should have, and it's very unlikely that, I mean, I suppose heads up, maybe sometimes you are allowed to check raise like ace jack, but you've got two of the jacks. So same thing with king jack, a little bit different than a full ring format where you would not check raise those hands.
Point, I give him non-zero, probably 5 to 10%. Ace jack, Potentially some king jacks. I think king jack is most likely value hand outside of queen 10.
But there are full
And then
16 combos of queen 10. So, I mean, this is
exactly,
one
I
of
think
these.
that's his most likely.
Yeah, and then this is one of these spots where you're just gonna, obviously you're gonna play this as a call across streets.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Like if he wants to structure a bluffing range, like on paper, it's kind of even difficult for me to see what
Queen
kind of.
jack,
Yeah, it's
king
like
queen,
queen
jack
jack with
10.
like a back door, like jack 10 with a back door, something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I guess that would sometimes get you off of, say, like a weak ace might be, but it's just, you just don't see it. It's a very, very under bluffed board. This is where I said, like, when people go back and you start to use some of the computer modeling, even if it doesn't necessarily apply to live poker, you just start to see some of what the solvers say should be bluffed, and then that starts to get you like looking at combos. People out there that are listening to this and understanding structuring, but obviously you have a pretty easy call here, I'm assuming here.
Absolutely. No, it's 100% flat there. I'm never
Yeah.
going to, especially when he has propensity to have queen 10 and or bluffs on the whole. So I flat.
Yep.
The turn is the 6 of clubs, putting a backdoor flush draw out there. I have the jack of clubs, so only thing they may have is king x of clubs for a backdoor flush draw.
Or jack x of clubs, right?
I have the jack
Oh, you
of
have the
clubs.
jack of clubs in your hand. You just said that. Sorry. So just king x of clubs. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so unless he was just going all out, like bluff on the flop with like queen 8 or queen 9 of clubs and then backdoor club. So
Yeah.
nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
He leads, though, for 217,
So
which would be 70% pot.
yeah, I was gonna say I think the pot's like 315 ish or something like that. So you bet he leads for
297, yeah.
two. It's 290, 240.
297.
Okay, 297. Okay, so I'm just gonna say 300 to make it easy. So 217
Okay,
into
yeah.
300, and again, I mean you're gonna have a call here as well, and I
100%.
mean unless honestly, like it's very, very, especially like heads up, it's gonna be very difficult to fold. I feel like almost to any card. I mean, maybe if like the 10 or queen of clubs comes in at the end, but besides that, heads up, this is going to be very, very hard to fold. I mean, you call here, and then if the river's a brick and, let's say, for example, he jams all in for like a pot size bet, I just find it very,
I'm
very
never
difficult to
folding.
fold. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's allowing him to value bet his weaker hand,
Sure.
allowing him to continue with bluffs, and if he has queen 10, so be it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to ever try to escape from his hand, unless, like you just said, the queen or 10 of clubs pops off, and then we can, evaluate based off of his bet sizing.
So looks like the pot here is probably somewhere around 730-ish, right?
730,
Yeah, 730.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
So pot 730, the river's the brick, it's the 4 of hearts. And this is really the crux of the hand for where my decision point, because I think up until now it's fairly straightforward of doing a check call down as soon as a call down as
right?
soon as he check raise.
Right.
The hand would have played differently if he just flatted, but
Right.
so river's the 4 hearts, and now so there's 634 behind, and this pot's 730, and he checks.
So now he checks. Interesting.
Right. And so I'm not one to get into solvers. I have friend run it, and he says that at this point it's always a jam. You're maximizing for jam. However, my belief is because I call check raise and then call the 70% bet on turn, and I obviously have 0 bluffs in my hand at this point. I'm heavily weighted towards 2 pair plus.
Right.
Just large amounts of value. Probably ace queen, ace 10 is my absolute worst hands, which I think is a very close check back on river. I decide to go 1/3 pot.
So
because I think that's more exploitative.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can get on board with I can definitely get on board with what you're saying. I mean, I think one of the things that you have to understand from that solver perspective is that you have to find the bluffs here at the end in order for that to be, like the balanced
Right.
play. Like, and what would your bluffs consist of? It's interesting because did your friend run that with basically a 6x check raise size? Because the guy made it pretty large on the flop.
Right.
Because I mean, I
He
was
ran it, and essentially it has me. I was supposed to, via solver, defend Queen X and 10X of clubs
right,
or backdoor draws on the flop,
right,
and then
right.
continue on the turn when I pick up the flush draw,
Hmm.
and then that Queen X or 10X of clubs balances my jam on the river with Ace, King, Jack. Yeah,
What about King X and Jack X of clubs too? I think some of those two might be part of your bluffing range
right.
at
But
the
I
end.
mean, on the whole, I think that's nice in theory. I
Right,
don't
that's what
think
I
I'm
mean.
ever going to
Right.
be in practicality defending Queen X or 10X of clubs
Yeah, no, I can get on board
on
with
that
it.
board texture.
Yeah, I can get on board, especially if you don't think that the guy's experienced. And because if he's not experienced in no limit and it's heads up, he might just think, "Oh, I'm supposed to check raise an ace." And if you jam at the end here, it's really hard for him to call down with like
I just think I look
ace
extremely
nine.
value heavy.
Right, right. No, I
And so
definitely,
I
yeah,
want to
I
lay
think
him
250
a
to
price.
300, maybe something like that. What'd you end up doing?
I bet 255. So right in there.
Hero
Laying him
bets
4 to 1.
255. Somebody in the live chat is saying you're supposed to probably jam to get value out of two pair. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Nathan's talking about, but I just don't know with him having two of the jacks in his hand and the villain not ever really having ace king, it's just very unlikely. And again, he would have to play it in this manner where he would go check raise bet and then check the river. You know what I mean? Like if he's gonna play ace jack or king jack as a check raise, is he going check
And
raise bet and then check the river? I mean, definitely not all the time, for sure.
and at this point, we're clearly no longer worried about Queen 10 when he checks the river. So
Sure.
it's clearly just value at this point.
Yeah.
But so he ended up calling,
Okay.
and he had King Jack,
King jack for bottom two.
bottom two, which, I mean, looking at, I feel, even knowing his hand, I feel more comfortable going on the 255
Yeah.
versus jamming, because I think if I jam after taking the line I did, he can probably find a fold.
So when your friend ran through a solver, what is his?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have him look at what his defense range was supposed to be to a jam?
He should be calling King Jack plus.
King, just any two pair, I guess, right?
Right.
And
And
just
that boils down to me supposed to be defending Queen X and 10X backdoor
right,
on the flop.
right. And it's also an interesting line though too, because I don't know how often this line is supposed to go down where it's check raise bet check call with some of the weaker parts of his range. I mean, I get, you're supposed to be inherently balanced, so that maybe it is from a solver perspective, like that some of the worst hands that he gets here with, some of his worst value on the flop and on the turn are put into a check call range. But again, this is kind of a cat and mouse thing, or it's not reality, because a lot of times people aren't going to have those. You're not going to really have a ton of those bluffs at the end, because this flop, I think, is a little bit under check raise too. So I mean, I don't see a problem with it at all, because I think mainly like you're probably going to end up here with your opponent having mostly ace X, and it's just one of these things where, yeah, he ended up with king jack now, but especially with the properties of your hand. I mean, put it this way: say you had Queen 10 and you played it this way, that would be much more of a. I would feel much more comfortable jamming any hand that doesn't block two pair. But
Absolutely.
you're blocking the primary
Most
two
of the
pair
value
hands,
range.
right? Because he's not going to have
Right.
ace king, so there's just so few combos that it seems more likely that it's going to be ace X. So I think it's played fine.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I definitely lean towards the exploitative side versus GTO, and he
yeah,
just argued with me for 30 minutes on, oh, it has to be a jam, and you're burning money. And I was like, I think you just have to offer him the pot odds to call on his ace X and potential King Jack
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely.
You have to offer those pot odds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an exploitative. I think it's probably in this particular situation the best way to play the hand for the most EV. If you were playing a game theory optimal sort of situation where you're playing against two computers that are trying to play at equilibrium, then sure, it's a jam. But this guy's not going to have that structured check raising in his range, and you'd have to get into like some crazy node locking.
Right. I also think, coming from the fact that it's a mixed game, where he's not necessarily strong in this,
Sure.
and then 5 out of the 7 games are limit,
Right.
then most of those players are less likely to call large bets on the river because they don't want to give away all the profits from the limit into the no limit or pot limit. So you can go smaller with your value hands and larger inversely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, I can get,
okay.
I can definitely get on board. I mean, it's a really good life example of how there are other things that are sometimes going on that you have to bring into the table or into the situation. And here, probably the most important one is the fact that you are playing a big bet mix where your particular opponent probably doesn't play a lot of no limit cash. So you want to try to play a hand in basically the best way that you think is profitable. Right. So I appreciate it, Nathan. Thanks a lot. Thanks again. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.